Hey, greetings everyone. Getting around to doing a little critique of our first project here. I'm just going to do sort of an overview critique of the whole class, and I didn't go out and pick all the best images or whatever. I picked images to talk about technical things or conceptual things or just visual construction or whatever they are. So, if I pull up one of your photographs and I say something critical about it, it doesn't mean I don't like all your photographs and you did horrible. I just pull it up to talk about something. I would try to get images both positive and negative and whatnot to look at. All right. So with the next project, I'm going to try and do a critique of everyone's first two projects. So we'll see how that goes. That'll be quite a bit of video work, but I'll try and get through that. It'll probably take me quite a few days to do that. But that is my goal, to give you sort of a midterm personal critique of the images that you created with the first project. Anyways, here we go with this critique. This first image is one that to me at first seems very banal. It looks at, it has this infinite depth of field. But I also find it one of those, to me, interesting images of this sort of everyday scene presented in a sort of non-fantastical light, but I don't think that's particularly a negative. And I've recently been fairly influenced by Charlotte Cotton's book, The Photograph as Contemporary Art. Really kind of changed my view on contemporary photography and what it does and how it pushes things. I can't explain all that right now, but if you're interested, it certainly is a good book to look at and help me appreciate some more contemporary works. And this one seems like an image that could come from that book. I just love all the little people in the background, and there's a sort of a visual rhythm established in this image, but it's not like as close and concise as you get in modernist photography, where everything seems so confined and so absolutely minimalistic at times that everything there has an immediate visual impact. And here it's much more subtle with the dotting of these things. And I like how that's a relationship of the dotting of the people throughout the scene back there. And then I like this rhythm of these trees here. So there is a nice, I think, visual construction to this image, but it also seems to come across as fairly banal and plain and that sort of thing. But I think there's actually a value to that. This one I think was just a good illustration of a narrow depth of field. A large aperture, f2.8, 2.0, something like that. We just get this little bit of area in focus here, and out of focus, in focus, and then out of focus again, and you can manipulate that and choose. And I think that illustrates it very well. As a standalone image, it doesn't go much beyond that for me. This image, I like the texture of what I'm seeing here, and I picked this image up more for there's an exposure, a technical aspect here of overexposure. When we look at photographs, and the thing you're taught in the darkroom is there should never be any absolute whites, and there should never be any absolute blacks. Everything should be in that mid-range. And here I would say this is technically overexposed. So this is absolute white here. There's no information there, nothing, and that's typically thought of as bad. That's one of our rules, basic rules of photography. I like the image, I like the construction, I like the texture and then the camera, and I think it would be better if we had a better exposure to it. Here's another image that I just find kind of a little bit bizarre, and to me that's good. It's this sort of ant view perspective, right on the ground, and we have this very narrow depth of field, all this out of focus, in focus, and then out of focus stuff, and that is interesting artifact of the camera. Our eyes cannot see this out of focus, in focus, out of focus thing. Our eyes can see things out of focus, but then everything behind that will be in focus. So the camera sees different than our eyes see. That's, I think, an important thing to learn and to remember, and people don't always think about. And I like how this image does that. I also like, again, there's a nice construction here. There's the diagonal, and this thing here, and the framing of this line going here. And it makes me very curious because it's not one of those scenes that most people think are going to stop and photograph, but has been constructed to become kind of interesting. And part of it is just, again, the sort of, I think, ugliness of the materials that I see, this dirt and this rock or concrete or whatever it is here. The clouds are kind of pretty, and we have the swing set and things that are not typically thought of picturesque, but he found a way to organize them that kind of piques my curiosity. This image, I like, there's a good use of depth of field and how she's out of focus, and that kind of, puts a different emphasis because, people we think are so important. If there's a person in a picture, we're going to gravitate that, look at, try and recognize it, find their relationship to what's going on in that image. We just think people are important. Being people, we think that we're important. It's called anthropocentrism. There's our big word. Anthropocentrism. So having her out of focus kind of plays with that, plays with our psychology just a little bit. I think it's interesting how she's all squished up here too. And I'm trying to decide, I think I would prefer something other than the smile here. She had another photograph, I don't know if I have it here, where she had this, the next one here, where I really love just, there's this sort of honesty in this look, and there's it's not this, I think, so often in photographs you find a sort of fake happiness. Everyone pastes on their smile because the world is great. And I like this. It doesn't seem sad or mad or any of those really negative things. It just seems a sort of very honest, just sort of moment, which the face here, I'm not saying that it's dishonest, but it seems a little out of place maybe to me in the photograph. I thought this was a really nice use of a very narrow depth of field and just the texture of the goatee and mustache and a little bit of light. So I like the construction of this image, and that's pretty much what I have to say about it. The other thing, we're looking at self-portraits, and self-portraits, obviously, mostly, quite a few of these are not these recognizable things. Some of them are. But the thing that we have to remember when there are faces in an image, and like when I talk to my students about words, when you're photographing something and there's words in there, to be very aware of what those words are saying, because the viewer is going to relate the meaning of the image to those words. And it's the same thing with the face. When facial expressions, we as humans, I was reading some research or something, some program, that we as humans are by far the best at looking at another human and divining intent. What is their intent? Are they a liar? Are they truthful? Are they honest? Are they respectful? We as a species are very good at that, and we as a species will therefore abandon our children of other people more so than any other species, because we have that ability to divine intent on face. So when faces are in a photograph, again, it's just like words. You have to be able to realize that the viewer is going to read into that face and associate meaning of the image to what that face is telling them. And I just like this this sort of look here. I like the construction, the diagonals here, and then this face, and this very sort of bland, non-emotional look on it. And again here, a sort of very direct gaze into the camera, and then this sort of, the face doesn't tell you too much. It is not happy. It is not mad. It is somewhere in that middle ground. But I like that, again, the narrow depth of field. I like the texture of this dirt here. Now, we also might be able to say, hey, I wonder what, if we can get a little bit more information, maybe this is overexposed. You don't have to have all that information all the time. I know I'm contradicting myself. But that's what we do as artists. We have our rules, and then we set out to challenge those rules and break those rules, and that is, for me, what art is all about. It is challenging the world, challenging the rules, the visual rules, the aesthetic rules, the cultural rules, the mores, whatever they are, challenging things. So I like this image. Here's another good use of a narrow depth of field. I love, there's this nice complementary color scheme, red and green, but we have blue in there, so maybe it's almost the four psychological primaries. We could argue a little bit of yellow in there or something like that. Whatever. That is one of the biggest challenges with photography is, with other mediums, you decide the color palette that you're going to use, in photography, unless you're completely constructing the image, you have to work within something that exists. And that can be a real challenge, and sometimes why I think black and white is easier than color photography, because then you don't have to worry about all these colors and their being harmonious or discordant or any of those things. Where if you go grayscale, you just chuck that out and you can deal with contrast and lightness and darkness and all those sorts of things. But here I think that the colors work well. I like the structure, I like the formality, I like the textures. It's a nice image. Here's really light and dark. I said earlier that you should never have absolute blacks or absolute whites, and this stuff here is absolute black. There's no information in here. But at times it just works and it's successful, and I think this is one of those images. But you wouldn't want the absolute blacks. This information that you're trying to communicate. Even here in the shadows, see how we still see a little bit of foot. It doesn't go black. That I think is good. There's just it's really dark, but there's still information. Here, I have no problem with that area going completely black. Again, here's another one I like. I like the facial expression. I guess the key for this assignment was not to smile. I don't know if that's true or not, but I like the highlight on her. I like this fake dark background. I'm really into right now our understanding of reality and how I think slim it is. So having this faux environment behind you and having this it's almost like stage lighting on you. And then that gaze off here into the distance, whether or not the person's confronting the camera with their gaze or looking different, helps communicate and structure something and some sort of meaning to the image for the viewer. I really like the use of depth of field on this image, but I'm really just not sure, that this is the appropriate facial expression that I want here. It seems like I really like the bland, neutral expression. I don't know. Maybe it works. I'm not sure. And it's just the way we are sometimes with art. Especially I think when I look at images and first come across them, I don't always know if it's right or it's wrong or it's good or it's bad. I think that's good, because then you have to continue to think about it. And I think this is one of those images that's constructed in an interesting enough way where you have to look at it and contemplate it. This one I think is interesting. There's this sort of a concept of eating knowledge, or the book, or something like that. That's what I get from this. But my problem, I like the structure of it. I like the angles and the zooming in on the face and all this, but nothing's sharp. Nothing, is in focus. And if we could get something in focus, even if it's just a little bit here, or just the tip of the nose, or to the pages of the book, if just that was in focus, I think it would so much make the image better. And I think generally just kind of blurry images don't work, and this is overall blurry, though I like everything else that's going on in it. I want something sharp. And I think this image kind of suffers in a similar sort of way. I really want this focus on this cat and have her a little bit softer in the background, though I see she did crop it a little bit because I made some comment earlier, but there was a picture up here and I found it distracting, at least how much of it was in there. So I think that was a good choice, but overall the image is just a little bit soft. I want something sharp, and I might even use an even narrower depth of field or something just to get the focus on the cat and let this stuff go blurry. I like this image, though. There's a really a nice construction here. I like the in focus, the out of focus. I see the sharpness here, and there's a lot of blurriness, a little bit out of focus here. Something else weird is going on here. But I love these layers and layers and layers of information. It's like literally being in a hall of mirrors, and it's broken information. There's a lot going on here. Here I think is an image that really works with some of that blown out information. This looks almost angelic in a sense. We have this bright blown out whites coming in here, and then moving, transitioning into her, and then into the door here, and this nice texture here, and the framing of all of this, and then there's a nice sort of look on her face. That has some warmth to it. Here you go. She's smiling, and I like the photograph. Hey, that's good. So it's not just neutral expressions. All right. So I think this is well, and I think it's one of those images that really works with that sort of overexposure, that blown out highlights, which is technically wrong. But,